Hi everyone, it's Alex from Risk Academy, and I wanted to do another video on some common misconceptions or some of the fundamental reasons why risk management, while I believe is an extremely powerful decision-making tool, doesn't really get the credit it deserves in the corporate life, why many risk managers in non-financial companies are still very far from being perceived as a trusted advisor to the CEO or to the decision makers. And there are obviously many reasons why that may be the case. Basic pure lack of competency for a particular risk manager is probably one of the most common ones, but I want to talk about something that is equally applicable to probably majority of the corporate risk managers in the world. And in the previous video, I talked about the science behind how people make decisions, and I stressed the importance of understanding the actual chemistry and the science behind how humans behave, any human behaves, in the situations of uncertainty. But in this video, I wanted to talk about risk managers maybe not being pragmatic enough, maybe being too unrealistic, or maybe just using too much wishful thinking in their approach. Because I mean, if you ask any average corporate risk manager, any sort of any corporate risk manager you meet at the conference or online, what is the fundamental objective or the benefit of risk management, they would probably say that it helps and increases the likelihood of achieving corporate objectives. Now that sounds very true, and it sounds very, very solid, like a very solid argument. But the reality is that, I mean, it kind of depends on the nationality and the corporate culture and the sort of the national specifics of doing business. But I guess I've had a lot of experience with the Australian market and the Russian market, and well, the Russian market is much more pragmatic. And what I have discovered is that when you talk about aspirational things of achieving objectives better, quicker, some corporate good or social good, it doesn't really, I mean, people kind of pretend to play along and they say it's important, but it's not really that important to them personally, so they would change their approach, they would action it. There's something more pragmatic, something that is more personal to each of the decision makers, and usually it's really down to two simple things: avoid prosecution, preserve his own corporate brand and reputation, grow in the company or increase his power of influence, his decision makers, and make money. And not necessarily make money for the organization or the shareholders as a whole, but make money for that particular individual. So I've struggled for years trying to kind of have that conversation with the executives about their objectives, only to realize that they only half-heartedly participate in that discussion, because to them everything you say about corporate objectives immediately in their mind translates into, what does that mean for me personally? Will that threaten my influence? Will that increase my influence? Will that make me more bonus payments, or will it make me less bonus payments? So there is that global disconnect between the corporate and social good and individual good. And if the motivational system is well aligned, usually those two things will be quite close, but they may be very, very separate. Something that may be good for the company as a whole may in fact be perceived as a threat for a particular decision maker, because he has a completely different hidden agenda or his own vested interest. So the second reason why I think risk management didn't really hit the mark with the decision makers is that we may be too aspirational, too wishful thinking in our approach, in our messages, in our perceptions of reality. Unless risk management can demonstrate that it can preserve the power of an individual and make money for that individual himself, and knowing cognitive biases, that benefit has to be short-term because long-term doesn't work for humans, then maybe it would be easier to have that conversation. So as risk managers, don't assume that if you talk about aspirational, long-term strategic stuff, goals and objectives and corporate reputation, that the individual that you talk to will make that connection to his individual benefit. Help the decision makers by making that link very clear, by talking to people about what this particular risk analysis means to them as an individual. Will it make them more money? Will it make them less money? Will it protect their bonus payments in 6 months? Or will it hinder their bonus payments in 6 months? That I've personally found was a much easier conversation to have than just talking about high-level objectives. So I've even written an article about that, and the name of the article was "Individual risks and corporate risks are not the same." And if you want to build up that rapport with the decision makers, well, you really need to understand what his or her personal risks are first, and then try and apply your risk management competencies, your tools, to his or her personal risks, and that will create a much easier, better conversation. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Do let me know what you think about maybe it's just the nature of business in Russia, and everyone else in the world is socially responsible and very good wishing for the benefit of the whole shareholders and society. Do let me know. I've personally became a very pragmatic person when I've discovered that no one really cares about corporate objectives as much as they care about their personal objectives, which are usually not documented anywhere that you can kind of measure risks across them. So anyway, interested in hearing your thoughts. Do let me know. Thank you and goodbye.